Do you want to know how to get kids to stop whining? I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds, child development, and education, all through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we're talking about whining. In this video, we're going to be talking about the whining cycle, and we're going to talk about how to teach the children calmness and give the children better tools that they need for expression. Nobody likes whining. It feels manipulative because it actually is. It's a type of communication that can be a miscommunication. Sometimes a person whines because they're trying to get a point across and they don't actually recognize that it's coming across as whiny. Some of their feelings or emotions are coming out in the tone of the language, but sometimes they're actually trying to manipulate with that communication, and that can be whiny sounding too. But most people, when they hear the whininess, instantly feel a little bit disrespected or manipulated. And this is actually why people don't respond well to whining. Now, if you do respond well to whining, it's going to be hard to stop the whining. What I mean is, if your child whines and then you give them what they want and you go through that cycle enough times, then your child will learn that whining works. So the child asks something. The parent doesn't give a definitive answer or decision to the child. And so now the child is feeling a little bit anxious. They've got anxiety building inside. Am I going to get that thing? Am I not going to get that thing? Now the child starts to press harder. The harder pressing is the whining. This is to try to get more attention, to elevate the request to a higher level concern so that they can get the problem solved faster. That's the cycle that they really go through, and this is why they oftentimes get to that whining. Now, I know sometimes whining can be caused because of a request instead of the child asking the parent something. Sometimes parents give their children instructions. The child does not want to do the instruction, but instead of expressing themselves appropriately to the parent, the child will decide to feel burdened, misunderstood, and so then that tone comes out to the parent as whining. So what could help a child with both of these scenarios is learning how to communicate calmly and effectively. They need the proper tools for communication that's going to help them get understood, that's going to help them learn how to get their way or to be okay if it's not one of those times that they can get their way. If you've already subscribed to this channel, then you know that I teach a lot about skills on this channel. And the basic skills, the 4 basic skills, are taught in these children's books to the children, probably ages 12 and under. Hopefully your over 12-year-old is not whining, although that can be a thing. And I know that sometimes we have to deal with that too. So these children's books each teach one of the 4 basic skills for self-government. And those 4 basic skills are following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. This book here teaches the skill disagreeing appropriately. That's going to be the main skill that we're going to want to focus on with a child that's whining, because this is the skill that helps them feel understood. Now, even if your child is a little bit older, you can still teach these skills of self-government. And in my TSG parenting course, as well as in my book, Parenting a House United, all the skills and principles of self-government that you'll need are in there, including this one, disagreeing appropriately. So let's look at a few of these other books too. So this book, Following Instructions, if you make a request or give your child an instruction, they need to learn the 5 steps to following an instruction. Now, when they make a request from you or ask a question of you, and you are going to give them a no answer, they need this skill, which is how to accept a no answer. Now, what's one other scenario when a child might turn to whining? This is when you've corrected them for something and they have to do a negative consequence of some sort. This could lead to pouting and whining. So they need the skill in this book, which is accepting consequences. So let's talk about especially the skill disagreeing appropriately, because that is the gateway skill to self-government. And if they can choose to do that one instead of the whining behavior should actually end pretty soon, especially if the skill works. Mature people know how to disagree appropriately with others, and I'm talking adults too, because we all know adults who just argue with each other or even who whine at each other. And those adults don't have the skill development that they need. They don't understand calm, effective communication. So in your home, hopefully you have established a constant tone of calmness, meaning that calmness is what our go-to is. It's our baseline in our family. If we don't have calmness, we've got to get ourselves back to calmness. And there are ways in my TSG parenting course, I teach how to help a person who's going completely out of control to get themselves back to calmness. So there are methods and skills for how to do that. I'm not going to go into all that right now, but hopefully the family knows our family does calmness. They know what calmness is and what it's not. What's a calm face? What's a calm body? What's a calm voice? You need to train them on those things so that they know what it looks like when someone is not being calm. This is going to help them self-evaluate, which is a big part of learning self-government. So let's talk about the skill disagreeing appropriately, which is done with calmness. Now, when a person disagrees appropriately, it's actually wise to teach them ahead of time to tell the other person that they're speaking to, I'd like to disagree appropriately, or may I disagree appropriately. If they do that, that actually pre-teaches the other person to listen, pay attention, and to be calm as well. So you'll be doing yourself a favor if you teach your child to ask, okay, may I disagree appropriately with you? And the answer to that question should always be yes. Yes, you may disagree appropriately. That doesn't mean that you're going to see their way or go their way yet, but you are going to give them a chance to be heard and to listen. And there is a format to follow with this disagree appropriately so that it doesn't end up too long and they're just trying to wear you down. Those types of things that sometimes whiners and manipulators will try to do. The steps to disagreeing appropriately are, you look at the person, you keep a calm face, voice, and body. So we have to establish we're calm. If somebody's whining, that's not disagreeing appropriately because that's not a calm face, voice, and body. So they need to be able to say that they understand you and to talk to you in a way that is calm. Otherwise, you would have to still do a correction. Number 3 is say that you understand the other person's point of view. So you would say, I know or I understand that you feel this way because, or you are giving me a no answer because. So now they have to go to front brain. This actually pulls them out of the whiny brain, which is really nice because the whiny brain's like your midbrain. It's like that amygdala part of the brain where all of the emotions start firing, that type of thing. So if we can pull them to front brain, suddenly the whininess doesn't become a problem. So they start remembering, recalling what it was you said, why it was a no, and that type of thing. Then they go into more front brain work by explaining why they feel like they need to do something the other way. So, but this is what I feel now is the next step. Then after that, they listen to what you have to say about it. And ultimately, since you have the parental authority, you get to decide yes or no. They need to be able to say okay to that decision and then drop the subject. More whiningness often occurs when a person cannot or will not drop the subject. They keep processing on it. So a person can choose to say, I'm not going to think about that anymore. I think sometimes we believe the myth that we can't control our own thoughts or our own emotions, but we can. We can identify what they are, and we can choose what we are going to do and think and what we're not going to do and think. That's one of the best parts of being a human, is that we can analyze and we can change our behavioral patterns. When your child chooses to take the time to learn their self-government skills, like disagreeing appropriately, make sure that it works for them a lot of the time. We should reinforce that front brain work. If you want them to stop going to midbrain and whining, they need to see that their other skill is going to be beneficial to them. This is why this is the gateway skill to self-government. This is the way to be understood and to get your way a lot of the time. So when you are teaching them, do you have to say yes to everything they say? Absolutely not. But make sure they're getting enough yeses when they disagree appropriately that they know that this is what we should try first before we start trying to go to emotional manipulation, which is essentially what whining is. Now, I know people feel discouraged. That's one of the reasons that they whine. But the whining is the emotional part. The discouragement is the feelings part. When I feel discouraged, there's lots of things that I could do. I don't have to go to an emotional whining that's going to be non-productive and bad for my relationships. So teaching your children that is actually incredibly liberating. So we want to reinforce the skill development. We want to reinforce the calmness. So describe what you're seeing that's good. Do a good 3-step praise like the one that I teach in my TSG parenting course, and you'll see that they will repeat that skill more often as they are able to recognize when it's actually serving them and doing some good. But I'd like to just share with you a story about a 5-year-old who was a whiny 5-year-old. It was a little boy who was a single child. He was kind of used to whining to get his way. The parents started learning self-government. They took my TSG parenting mastery training, which is a 3-day intensive training for couples. And then they went home and started implementing the skills and principles of self-government. The parents reported to me that within 2 days of teaching their child the 4 basic skills and being consistent in their corrections of those skills, which we don't have time to go into in this video, but when they did those corrections in that calm, self-governed way, and that child got the opportunity to see that the whining was not going to be productive for them and to evaluate themselves, that within 2 days the child stopped the habitual whining. I'm sure that doesn't mean the child never whined again. After all, he was 5, and sometimes we revisit old habits. But by and large, the family reported he was no longer what they would consider to be a whiny child. And this was because suddenly he had the tools that he needed for success. There are so many teaching self-government tools that I would love to share with you, especially the tools for correcting all those negative behaviors when they occur. To find out how to do the corrections and to get the tools that you need for success, go to the TSG parenting course, which is on my website, teachingselfgovernment.com.